Okay. Hello again, everybody. We're back here again with Alyssa, and yeah, we have an exciting, show we're gonna do today. We're gonna talk about our top 10 favorite films of 2021.
Yeah, this was a blast last year, so I'm excited.
Yeah, and I have no idea what your list is. No idea.
Yeah.
I didn't do any checking, so everything's gonna be a surprise to me, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I don't know about yours either, so we're both going in this blind about each other's picks, so
Yeah. This will be the first time I've talked about what my list will be. I spent the last probably week. There was about 6 films that I wanted to watch that were kind of, they usually there's things that are small films,
mm-hmm.
independent films that are very well critically acclaimed, but they don't get a wide release. Usually around this time they get some type of video on demand, or now there's becoming this sort of trend of these indie streaming services. It's becoming a platform
Yeah.
for them, which is kind of a cool thing. I think it's a good direction. So yeah, and so I watched a couple of those films, and now I felt confident to put my list out, and and you want to do this video, so here we are. We're
Yep,
doing the
we're
thing.
here. Which I know there's probably some movies that I live in a small town. I didn't get to see them, so they didn't make the list, and if I had seen them, they probably would have. Um, Such as like I don't know, drive my car. I want to see Belle, which is not even showing anywhere near me. That's a frustration of being a fan of foreign films and indie
Hmm.
films and stuff, and being in a small town. So,
Yeah.
if you wonder why I don't include something, it's probably because it wasn't here.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
why.
Yeah, that could be frustrating because it's honestly there were some that are on my list that were hard for me to see, and I live near one of the major movie market places. So yeah, I mean, especially now, I feel like availability of films is I mean, there could be films that are playing in theaters for like a week and it's gone.
Yeah,
So I feel like the time period is it's really short. It almost feels like you got a weekend to see it for
pretty
some reason.
much. Yeah, especially if the movie bombs. Like,
Oh yeah,
but they
yeah,
do come out relatively fast on demand and rental services. So
they do. They do. Yeah. So we were talking right before we came on here that we both kind of had a struggle of fitting some films on and some films off. So
yeah,
I think
last
we'll
year was a
start.
really
Mhm.
good year for movies.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I feel like there was some pent up stuff that hadn't been released that had been
Oh yeah.
delayed. That was a part of it, and then there's just there was a lot of good stuff. So yeah, so why don't we start with our honorable mentions?
Okay.
So these were the films that didn't make the list, but we thought were good, and were definitely worth mentioning. So yeah, Alyssa, do you have any honorable mentions that you want to talk about?
I have a couple, and I I kept putting them on the list, taking them off. First one I have to mention is Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's four
Yeah.
hours, but it goes by in a flash. Excuse the pun. I knew what I was about to say when I said it.
Yeah,
It was
it's a good
great.
one, so we forgive you. We're all laughing.
It was great, but it's honestly one of those movies that I don't see myself watching a ton just because of the length. I will watch it again, but it's just so long. But it's great though. Every second it just works, and I really like Zack Snyder's direction in the film and how he took the characters, and it's way better than the previous version of the film. And also Raya and the Last Dragon. I love that movie, but I loved one other Disney movie more.
Yeah.
But beautiful animation, beautiful story. I know some people had issues with Aquafina's voice acting, but they also had issues with her in
Okay.
Shang-Chi, which is also another honorable mention
Yeah.
because love that film too. It's great.
Hmm.
Can't
Hmm.
wait to see more of Shang-Chi's adventures
Hmm.
and to see him
Yes.
in more Marvel films. But yeah, it was so hard not putting those on the list. But
Yeah.
those are three that I really struggled with. So they're
Yeah.
great films.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some good picks. I definitely liked every single one of those films, and it just kind of shows how strong this year was. Like those were all good, very good. I mean, Shang Chi, that's one of my honorable mentions too. It was such a fun film, very fun. It felt like if there was a film where you could say, oh, here's the Marvel stereotypical, I guess you could say the formula. This is doing the
Yeah.
Marvel formula in a way that's fun and really enjoyable, and different too, because we've never seen a Marvel film do this type of do basically every Chinese action genre.
Yeah, it includes a lot in it,
Yeah.
and it just flows together so naturally.
Yeah, and I love Tony Leung. Most people
It's
probably have
great.
no idea who he is. Like, he is legitimately one of the greatest actors ever.
He is
Yeah,
fantastic.
he's fantastic, and he's great in the movie. And it's good too. They made a villain who's because there's so many stereotypical villains in the MCU that are just forgettable, absolutely forgettable. This guy was not forgettable. He was really, really well done. Yeah, so that was one of my honorable mentions. Another one for me was The Green Knight.
Love that movie.
Yeah, I really like that movie. That movie got very, very close to making my list. I watched the film. There was just a lot of things. I think there was a discourse about the film. People talked about it because people were confused, which happens, a lot with a lot of films. I found that to be interesting because you can take a lot of different perspectives on what the moral of the fable was. But just I thought the acting was good, and I thought that in terms of the direction and just the way it felt, the cinema out of it, the cinematography just it was just like a perfect sort of grim fairy tale. I really enjoyed that film.
I agree.
Yeah. So yeah, another one for me was Drive My Car. I did get a chance to see that. I liked it a lot. There's some
I
stuff
really want to see it.
yeah, there's some stuff that's really well done. It's definitely worth watching. It is a 3-hour drama.
Yeah, I was gonna say the length is intimidating, but it is based off a Haruki Murakami short story. And when you hear a short story, you're like, how do you make a 3-hour movie out of a short story? But I mean, one of my favorite authors. I have to see this movie when I get a chance to. I don't know when it's gonna be on demand or anything like that, but
Yeah. Hopefully soon. Yeah, so that's definitely a film worth watching, I would say. So another one for me was The Worst Person in the World.
that's another one on my list.
Yeah, it's this Norwegian rom-com, and it's really good. It's really heartfelt. I was just watching this interview with the lead actress, and she said she was going to quit acting before she got this role. Like the day before, she was like, "I'm done," and she got the call. Oh, you should star in this film. Okay, I guess I'm back. And then but you can still every film. Who knows how well it's going to be? But this became a thing. Yeah, and so I mean, she's excellent in the movie, and this movie it does things that you could do in an R-rated American rom-com of the same kind of genre, but I just feel like there's something about the fact that it's European and it's a different perspective. She does some things, the main character, she does some things in the film that feel like you couldn't really get away with it in an American film. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And well, you could, but you just don't really see it. And it was just refreshing because it felt like a totally different take on the genre that wasn't, because it can become super monotonous. The American ones, it's let's get hot person A, hot person B, one's a guy, one's a girl, and and then just find some silly plot device to get them together. This didn't feel like that. This felt like a person exploring themselves and making some hard choices and kind of not always being, a good person, and that made it feel authentic. So yeah, I definitely recommend Worst Person in the World. Another one I saw fairly recently, but it gotten some good reviews and I liked it a lot, was this film Luzu. And this is about a guy, I believe it's in the Maltese. He's a fisherman and he's struggling to take care of his family. He has a child who's malnourished. So he gets into this illegal fishing underworld, basically, in order to, take care of his family. And plus there's all this other stuff with there's this sort of stuff about generational, I don't know how to put it. Basically, he's a third or fourth generation fisherman. And he's thinking about giving it up. And there's this program as a part of the EU where you can decommission your boat and they'll give you a bunch of money. And he's contemplating doing that, but he would be giving up the boat that was in his family for 4 generations. So it's Yeah. So yeah, that film was like really well done. I mean, especially for like the kind of classic character study indie film, like it was really well done in that vein. So yeah, so that was Luzu. Another one for me was Blue Bayou. I
I love
really,
that movie.
yeah, I really like that film. I know you like that film. So yeah, I wanted to mention it because like it's really well done. It's really well done. It's
Yeah,
very artistic and it's beautifully shot.
directorial
You know.
debut from Justin Chon, who was previously known for being in the Twilight films. So
Oh really? Oh,
I
that's
think his
cool.
character was it his name Justin? I haven't seen the Twilight movies or read the books in forever since
Yeah.
I was a teen. But he was a small character in the films. But yeah,
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great film, and it's it touches on the topic of immigration and stuff like that. And I mean, basically, the main character, he's pretty much raised in America, but because of something with he was adopted,
mm-hmm.
um, there wasn't the right procedure done. He's not actually an American citizen, so they try to deport
Yeah,
him. It's like, what? How can you deport a person who's never lived anywhere else? Like you deport it, it'd be like if they deported someone to a country they've never been to. It's like crazy.
yeah. And this is
Um,
actually based off what happens to people in America. This happens,
yeah,
and it's a devastating movie.
it's devastating. Yeah, it's really well acted and well shot, and there's some really cool stuff. I mean, the shot at the beginning of the movie is like it's like unbelievable. It's like, whoa, did I just like go into a painting?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Blue Bayou, that's another one. So another one for me was The Last Duel. Uh,
Fantastic
yeah,
movie.
I really like this film. So The Last Duel is one of the two Ridley Scott movies that we got, 2021.
Yeah, we got two.
We got two. So this one is about a real event of a duel that happened
Mm-hmm.
because an event happened with a sexual assault, and they didn't believe the woman. So in this time, well, we have to fight to the death to see who's right or wrong. And it's done in a way, in the Rashomon way, where we see every person's perspective, which was fun. Seeing where the lies were was fun, and the duel at the end was like insane, absolutely insane. I thought that was like, I didn't like, because again, this is based on a real event, so you can figure out what happened, see who won. But I had no idea, and so I'm like, oh, I really actually care.
Yeah.
I care about who wins this duel, and I do not want to see this woman get burned at the stake. So yeah, that made me very invested in that duel at the end, and it was so brutal. That scene at the
It
end
really
was,
is. I mean, it looks incredibly realistic.
yeah, yeah, and the way the person dies at the end is like frightening. It is frightening, but it's realistic. I mean, people did that. I mean, there's a lot of brutality in the history of the human race. So yeah, there's that one. So then there's like Encanto and In the Heights, both of those films, both very good, very very good. Encanto, like it's kind of funny. Encanto, so I watched it in the theater, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good, but it seemed like there was like not a big deal about it. And then it goes on Disney Plus, and now it's like
Yeah, it's
humongous.
huge. I mean, we don't talk about Bruno has topped Let It Go now. So,
Yeah,
which it is a
crazy.
very catchy song, and now it's going to be stuck in my head because I mentioned it.
Yeah, I've heard that song on the radio
Oh, I
multiple
have not
times.
heard it on the radio yet.
That was when I was like, they're playing that song on the radio? What? Like that's when I was like, okay, this is like, I don't know if I ever heard like Let It Go on the radio.
I never
But
heard it on the radio, no.
no, but it was big, but like this is big. It's crazy. So yeah, I mean, and it's a great film. It's a very beautifully well done film.
Oh, that also, I just remembered another honorable mention I had because Lin-Manuel Miranda did the songs for that, but Tick Tick Boom.
Yeah,
Love
yeah,
that movie, but I
mm-hmm.
feel like it's
Mm-hmm.
aimed toward people that really love musicals and the
Oh yeah,
theater because this is based on the life of, well, not really the life of the production of Jonathan Larson's first musical that he made, and just the frustration he goes through and no one really believing in him, but he's got this dream, and it's just crafted so beautifully, and Andrew Garfield is amazing in it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
again, I feel
yeah.
like it's for a niche audience though.
I totally agree. That's on my list too. I totally agree with you. It's like I need to talk to some of my, because I have some like theater friends, I actually want to see what they have to say about it. But like, you're totally right, because it's about the life of this guy, and there's so many things that for us, just like what basically people who aren't like really really big into that, where it wouldn't make sense, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in the film where it's basically a Rent origin story movie.
It is.
Like that, yeah.
I mean,
like,
you can definitely see where he got the inspiration for Rent from in the movie.
Yeah, totally. And so if you're into Rent, you're gonna be like, oh my god, I get that reference. It's like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme.
Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, we're just like, oh, okay. Because I remember there was like a scene where he was watching TV or something, and something had happened, some kind of event, and then he like wrote down a line. And I'm pretty sure that what he was writing down was like some important pieces of a song in Rent or something. Mm-hmm. But for me, I'm just like, but I heard someone else talk about, like, oh my god, that's how we, that's how we blah 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 blah. I was like, oh, okay, I guess that was a big deal. So yeah, but the acting's great, and I thought the direction was pretty good. I like that film a lot. I really like that film. So the last one for me is also Belfast.
Love that movie.
Yeah, Belfast is another great. It's so interesting because it's almost like, because it's told from the perspective of this child, but something really honestly terrible is happening in the film. This time period of all this strife, this religious strife that happened in Northern Ireland. And it's about them leaving their community and going somewhere where they totally have no idea. They have no roots there, and how difficult that is. But, maybe it's the right thing to do. I thought that film was really well done. So, yeah. Those are my honorable mentions. Cool. Yeah, and those are just like, didn't make the list, right?
I know. I'm interested to see what your list is, because several that you mentioned are on my actual list. So
yeah. Cool. So yeah, why don't, Alyssa, do you want to start with your number 10?
Sure. My number 10 is a movie called Violet. I don't know. Have you watched it?
I don't think I have.
And I'm not putting this on my list just because they quoted me in promo material. Okay. I'm not. It's really great. It stars Olivia Munn, which I know she's kind of problematic for people, but she's really fantastic in this movie. She plays a woman named Violet, and she's just basically working at this production company, and she has really bad anxiety. And throughout the movie, you hear a voice, Justin Theroux's voice in her head telling her, you're not good enough, you suck. And then you see writing on the screen, which is what she should actually be thinking, or so-and-so. And you see how it changes throughout the movie. And it's just, if you have anxiety or depression or anything of that nature, you really understand where it's coming from, where the dialogue's coming from. And it's just a really well-crafted film. It was directed by Justine Bateman, Jason Bateman's sister.
Interesting.
It's just, again, Olivia Munn's fantastic in the role, and I just really liked how they portrayed anxiety in the film. And I just thought it was really artistic, and it's something really special, and I don't think a lot of people have seen it, because I think it was in a very limited theatrical run, and then it went to on demand, which is where I watched it on demand. So I highly recommend it if you want a film about anxiety and how it feels like to experience it, because it's going to make you feel anxious watching it, but it's just really well done.
Yeah, I think I've kind of heard of this film. I think it is on a list of mine. But it's one of those where I've heard like one or two people talk about it. And so I was just like, since I'm a person, I like to track these things, I just put it on a list, but I didn't think about it a lot or know about it a lot. But to hear that you liked it that much kind of makes me, definitely interested in watching it.
I'd definitely like to hear what you thought about it if you do watch it.
Yeah, for sure. But it's just so hard. There's so many films, right?
I know.
Things get lost in the shuffle a little bit. But yeah, it's good that it made your list. You saw it? It made your list? Excellent. Okay, so my number 10 is Judas and the Black Messiah. Now this film, it feels like it came out a long time ago, right?
It does. Didn't it come out last January, February?
So yeah, I think it basically came out in January on HBO Max.
Yeah.
Which is why it feels like it was forever ago, because it's COVID time. I think this was another film that was supposed to come out in 2020, but it got pushed a little bit.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So that makes it feel even longer. But this film is really great. This film's really great. It's a really powerful film too because it kind of doesn't really hold back on the history that it's dealing with because it's some brutal stuff, honestly. And there's a scene towards the end where some people get killed, and it's like we really see how horrific it was, and
it was devastating to watch that.
Yeah,
and no, it's true story.
Yeah,
so
yeah, totally true. And man, Jesse Plemons is like it's like crazy, the type of level of acting he's at, and like the project, like the project. And I keep forgetting too that he was in Breaking Bad.
I know, and he's just like this goofy character in Breaking Bad, and then he's just killing in all these movie roles.
He's killing it. Just, to be honest, like his character in Breaking Bad scares the shit out of me. Like that guy is scary. Like I would never want to cross paths with him or cross him, because he seemed like the type who would like chop you up into pieces and then eat you or something in that movie, in that TV show. And he was also in the El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie. But he's excellent at playing these roles where it's like this guy who's, I don't know, there's something under the surface where there's just this heinousness, but it won't come out. There's this veneer that's holding it back. And again, Lakeith Stanfield is amazing. Daniel Kaluuya is amazing.
Won an Oscar.
Yeah. There's so many great performances in this film. And it's just, I really can't say enough too about Lakeith Stanfield, because like he thought he was going to play the lead role, and they're like, well, we actually want you to play the other guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh my God, that's so difficult, but he did it, and he's amazing. He's another guy, like, I feel like every time I see him in a movie, he is incredible.
Always excellent.
Yeah, I believe last year I saw Short Term 12, which he was in.
Oh, I love that movie. I've seen it so many times.
Yeah, that movie is amazing movie, and he's great in that too. And that was like an early. He. You can tell like it's coming from somewhere deep inside of him. He's able to channel truth, like something he's actually experienced, and then project it out. There's this great scene in the movie where, like, I forget what it was, but basically someone accused him of being a cop, and it was something about like a car. So they're in a car, and they're like, oh, you didn't steal this car, like someone gave it to you. He's like, no, I didn't steal the car, and someone did give it to him. So he's like, okay, well, wire the car right now, or I'm gonna kill you. And it's just like in the car, he has to like he's never done it in his life.
Yeah,
he has to do it, and then he does it, and it's like, oh man, like, because you kind of don't want to feel for the guy, because like he's literally selling out these people, and
he is, yeah.
See how it ends, but he's super conflicted, and they get him early on, and it's an amazing, and it's really kind of his film in a way. Like
it is, yeah.
Yeah, so it makes sense that they'd want a really, really strong actor for that role, because that's the hard role to play. It's really hard.
I mean, he is basically the Judas of the title. I mean,
yeah, sold him out for, and that's so devastating at the end, like, because he sells him out for silver, and I think he puts the money on the table or something at the end. It's like they're at a bar or something. He gives them it's just $1,000 or something. It's like, but like no amount of money is worth what he did to destroy this movement and kill this person and cut their life short. He was like, I forget it was like the guy was like Hugh Pinu, I believe. Anyway, he was like 24 when he got killed. He was 24.
Yeah,
being that young. I mean, it's unbelievable. So yeah, so that's my number 10, Judas and the Black Messiah. So yeah, so what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Encanto, because I really love this film. I did watch it on Disney Plus. I was going to watch it in the theater and I couldn't make it. So having it on Disney Plus was marvelous. And what I really liked about this film was there isn't a traditional villain in it, like in most typical Disney films. This is more about generational trauma, and I can't speak about this personally because it hasn't affected me, but you can see how this affects people whose families have immigrated and how they're treated. And I mean, for a Disney movie, this is tackling heavy topics, but you know, it still kids can watch it. Adults understand it more, but kids, see the bright colors, the catchy songs. Of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda, composed it. And of course, he's going to have great lyrics and great songs. And it's just, I don't know, it just connected with me in a way. And I really love this film. And We Don't Talk About Bruno and Surface Pressure are constantly playing in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great movie. I really liked it. I got a chance to see it in the theater. I feel like it came out, I don't know, it's just so hard to gauge these things right now because, it goes out on Disney Plus and it's huge. It's humongous.
Yeah.
It just exploded. And it's deservingly so. I think it's really great and I think it's very sweet. It's so interesting to like have, I mean, this kind of reminds me of Sky High where there was that one kid who didn't have powers or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
In a way. But I love the setup of the movie. Like the fact, that they were running from this, this terror. And because of that trauma, they create this place.
I mean, Abuela loses the love of her life coming to this place, and then the house is built from her trauma, and everyone in the family has special powers besides Mirabel, and then she has to deal with Abuela just kind of being hostile towards her because she doesn't have powers, and she has to save the house from falling apart, and it's just, you see how every member of this family has pressure put on them. And at first, everyone seems like they're happy. There's no issues. But then you start to see each person has their own difficulties. So you see what's beneath the surface. And it's wonderful. It definitely seems like it's aimed more towards adults just because of those messages. Even though kids can definitely, like I said, enjoy it with the songs and the bright colors. But I mean, definitely, it's incredible, and I love the fact that Luisa is one of the most popular characters, and her merchandise is outselling Isabella's.
Yeah, that's the one who's the really strong girl.
Yeah, Luisa, yeah.
Yeah, what they did with that, I saw this really funny thing where basically people were very skeptical about the character just by seeing the character. But the direction they took was so perfect. I mean, really, it's perfect.
And they said, I know the animator said they had to fight for her to have muscles.
Yeah.
And now she's just so popular and kids love her and they want the merchandise of her because she's strong and she's not like your typical Disney, not even princess or Disney character. She's a female character. She's something new for them to draw and to animate, and it's wonderful.
Totally. Yeah, I really like, and I love that song that she has where she's like, well, I everyone expects me to be able to do all these things and lift all this stuff. It's like, lift the house and move it here. It's like, I can't take it. I thought that was great.
It's one of my favorite songs out of the entire movie, off the soundtrack, whatever you want to say. I love that song.
Yeah. Yeah, I did too. I thought it was just so well done, and like you said, it's not a traditional villain. It's very introspective. I love the main character too. I mean, very relatable.
Yeah, Mirabel.
I love that first song too, where she's talking about everyone's powers.
The family madrigal.
Yeah, it is so smart too, because it's like, well, there's something missing here, something that was left out, and it's like, oh, well, look over there. I think she literally says that in the song too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love Encanto. It's very, very great film. Very fun. Cool. All right. So my number 9 is the Snyder Cut, the 4-hour Justice League movie. This was definitely very exciting. I was never like totally in on this whole Snyder Cut thing.
I wasn't either, to be honest.
There were some people in the periphery, but I always was like, what? What do you mean Snyder Cut? I remember watching that movie and like the original cut and just being like, wow, that was bad, and just basically having to move on.
I mean, I had fun watching the original version, but it wasn't mind blowing or fantastic or anything. It was just a fun time for me. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't special. It wasn't anything special.
Yeah. For me, like, I'm definitely more of a DC person. But like with the movies are so like, you just roll the dice and just hope for the best. Half the time they're terrible. Half the time can be really great. You get Joker, You get Dark Knight, and then you also get Green Lantern and
Yeah,
Justice League. And it's like, I never know what the hell I'm going to get. With the MCU, it's always pretty steady.
yeah, you know what? Pretty much what you're gonna get.
Yeah, you know what
DC is
you're
just
gonna
like it could be this goofy movie. It could be super serious. We don't know what. You just gotta wait and see.
Yeah. And so I kind of just like, okay, well, that died. But then, you know, this whole thing was really picking up steam, and it happened. We got the Snyder's version of the Justice League, and it's vastly superior to the original film. There's a lot of things that, for me personally, as a DC fan, that really just kind of hit right where what I want. Actually seeing like Darkseid like in a live action film, and feeling the presence of Darkseid, like basically the biggest evil being in the DC universe, was definitely a moment for me. The other thing too was like this Steppenwolf in this movie is so superior to the other film.
Yes.
It's like night and day. Like, this dude is like actually menacing, and actually I kind of liked him. I wish he didn't die. I wish he stayed around, because I actually care for this dude. I'm like, yeah, he probably got screwed over. There was something happened in his past where he was part of a plot and to overthrow somebody, and it didn't go right. So, well, now you got to pay this debt. You have to go and destroy 1 billion planets. But he's you could tell he's a loyal guy, and to be honest, he was kind of cute. They did some stuff. They made his face really cute, and he had these like little 3-toed feet, and it was like, oh, he's so cute. But he's very menacing, and he like there's a scene with the Amazons. He chops some people up, just chopped them in half. He chopped them in half. But the Steppenwolf stuff was so much better, and it just makes the film, because like you can actually tell this guy one-on-one, he could beat almost anyone other than Superman.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real threat. He's a real threat, and you know, on the other end of this is Darkseid, who's the threat. So, and they cut all that out. Basically, we got this really bad, like the Steppenwolf in the original was like, oof.
Yeah, he wasn't good.
So bad. And the storylines are so much more fleshed out. Cyborg's a real character. Get more stuff with the Flash. Even stuff with Diana, like the fact that she's basically we can see her yearning to go back home on a way.
Mm-hmm.
More history stuff. We actually see more of this first battle with Darkseid when he came to Earth, and it was Darkseid and not Steppenwolf, which was another thing that made a difference. Stuff with Aquaman, more of his past, basically. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about with the movie, because again, it's a 4-hour movie, and then we get this, you know, it ends the way we kind of expect, but it is a little bit of a different, better ending than the original, and then we get all these like 3 codas basically, and then this hilarious scene at the end where the Joker's talking about giving Batman a reach around, which made me laugh my ass off. this future, this destroyed future that's gonna happen. But overall, this is just a way better film. It's a way better film. Now, I don't know if, you know, again, this is a whole thing of contention. Are we going to keep going with the Snyder universe? DC's basically killed it. This is it. This is the end. But this is definitely a really, like, in terms of the DCEU, this is one of the best DCEU movies that's been.
It really is.
And that's great that we have it. And I'm definitely glad I got to watch it.
Me too. And I mean, especially it being on HBO Max made it a lot more accessible to people. And plus, I mean, if you put them in theaters, a lot of people wouldn't go and sit for 4 hours in a theater.
The only way I would, it would be IMAX. Seeing that in IMAX was, and some people did get to see it. There were some charity screenings, which were nice. But, you know, yeah, it's too long. It's too long, you know. They need to cut a couple of the endings and, I don't know, just do some other cutting. Like, there's probably a really, really good, I don't know, 3-hour movie in here.
Yeah.
But this film is very good. It's very good, for sure. All right, cool. So yeah, so that was my number 9. So what's your number 8?
My number 8 is actually another DC movie, and that is The Suicide Squad, which is James Gunn's take on it. I don't know if you'd call it a sequel, a remake, reboot. But I just loved how he took these characters. He brought back Harley Quinn, um, Rick Flag, Captain Boomerang, and then added all these new characters and just them going up against this bizarre enemy, Starro.
Starro the Conqueror, yes.
And then having characters like Polka Dot Man, and you see their backgrounds, and you have Peacemaker, obviously, who has his own show now. And just having James Gunn's sense of humor and his style, it just fits so well. And I loved Harley Quinn in this movie. I mean, way better than her portrayal in the original Suicide Squad. And just it was just so much fun. It was fun. It wasn't like the first Suicide Squad where it was all serious and dour. You could tell they had a blast making this movie. And even though it is about 2.5 hours long, it flies by. And it's just only James Gunn, I think, could have really pulled this off. And he did a phenomenal job. And I think adding Idris Elba to the movie and all these different other actors who are great, Piero Capaldi, awesome choice. That opening, I don't want to spoil it if you haven't watched the Suicide Squad, but the opening is not what you expect. So it's a treat.
And it's also a hard R.
Yes, it is a hard R movie. You're going to hear every single curse word imaginable in every single capacity it can be used. You're going to see a lot of blood and guts. I think there is some nudity, but not too much.
There's a little bit. Yeah, there's one guy.
yeah, you see, that's memorable.
There's one guy who's naked.
Also, King Shark and Ratcatcher 2. I didn't think I would feel so much affection for those two characters before this movie, and they both just kind of stole my heart. I'm like, oh,
totally.
I love you both.
Yeah. Yeah, my number 8 is also the Suicide Squad.
Twinsies.
Yeah, twinsies. Yeah. The thing I like too. So like the thing that's so interesting about James Gunn is like, there's all this stuff, this sophomoric humor, this Animal House kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But that's kind of like a smokescreen, because what he's really doing is he's like really kind of pulling on your heartstrings and like giving you some real emotional content. And that's kind of the same with this, because he's so good at like taking these random discarded trash characters that we think nothing of, and making us care about them, like King Shark, Shark who barely talks. But you can see that there's something else beyond just the shark who rips people apart and kills them. There's like a scene where he's like looking at people in wherever they are in South America and watching them play and stuff. You can tell that he yearns for some kind of connection. And then there's this other part where he like sees a bunch of fish. He's like, friends. Yeah. And they like burst through the thing and they start attacking him or something.
Not friends.
Not friends. Yeah, it's really funny. And Peacemaker got a show, and the show is great. And in this, again, like this character Peacemaker, who sounds so stupid, right? He's like, I'll do anything for peace. Like, I'll kill anyone for. It's like, what? This guy's an idiot. But like, it turns out to be really funny. The tighty whities, that weird helmet, like, it's funny, but then you also kind of care. And again, Ratcatcher, like, oh my god, like that character, you just immediately fall in love with the character.
Mm-hmm.
And Taika Waititi's in this movie. Taika Waititi's her dad. Taika Waititi's Ratcatcher 1, which is really cool. And honestly, Starro the Conqueror is like one of the great DC villains. Starro the Conqueror was the first villain that the Justice League fought in the comics. They fought Starro the Conqueror. And so to see him, or it, or whatever this thing is, starfish thing, come into being in the DCU was really cool. And this is some crazy kaiju stuff. I mean, it brainwashed a bunch of people and took control of them in a way pretty horrific. It's pretty horrific.
And again, I think only James Gunn could have made a giant starfish, basically, a villain, and made it believable.
Yeah.
And not like, so it's funny at points, but it's not like most directors probably would have played it off for laughs, like the whole entire thing. Not added that layer of brutality and horror that James Gunn does really well, while also mixing in humor.
Yeah, it's a lot of, it's just such a interesting mix, but it's so well done. I'm just thinking of like the scene where they're in space and they like meet, they see Star. Oh, hey, look at Starro, and then Starro comes into their little space station. They're like, oh, hi, and it's like the thing, like whoa, and it's like, okay, this is really scary. It's like, yeah, this thing takes control of people, and so now we're doing experiments on it so we can control it ourselves. Like what? And James Gunn has no problem killing off people that we care about.
Absolutely not.
No problem. Like you're saying, the beginning of the movie is like misdirect. And on top of that, like he kills some major characters in this franchise, in this movie, in a brutal way, and in a way that's kind of maybe unforgivable.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll see later on in the Peacemaker show that there's some haunting moments with some murders or near murders that happen. So very interesting stuff. Yeah. So interesting that that was both our number 8.
And
very cool.
It is interesting. Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, what's your number 7?
My number 7 is The Mitchells versus the Machines. This was such a charming movie. And I'm kind of sad it went straight to Netflix, but it did get a physical release, at least at Walmart, which I bought because this movie is great. I believe it's the same animation studio that did Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I think. But I love this movie about this family that, they're your typical family, and then the robot apocalypse happens. And they have to try to figure out how they're going to survive.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
This movie is so, like, quirky and crazy, but totally works.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a wild, unique movie, really. But again, there's this really strong emotional thing that goes because, like, it's about family and like about kind of, getting away from technology and stuff, and like not getting us stuck in this fake world, and as they call it, getting into meat space. It's really, but it's so creative.
It is.
It's like
the animation is just insane.
Yeah, it's just such a creative idea because, like, and something's good when it's like, okay, I always feel like there's movies that are really good. Like, there's like 2 things that happen that are like really good. Like, there's something that happens towards the end of the first act where like, okay, I didn't see that coming, and that's really cool. And then it happens again. You're like if something can like flip your expectations twice, that's really amazing. I felt like that film did that. It's like, whoa, is this movie? Oh wait, now we're gonna do this with this movie, and yeah. And there's so many funny things, like, I forget what it was, but there was something where like the robots it froze them up because they couldn't tell the difference between like the dog and something else.
Yeah, I can't remember what the other thing was.
I forget what that was, but like the dog, every time they look at the dog,
he's like, cannot compute.
Yeah, cannot compute. Like it was like a captcha. It's like cannot compute. Stuff like that is just so funny. It's just like really charming. But it had a real strong theme. It had a real strong thematic premise, and it really kind of made you think while also making you laugh. And like I really love there's a scene where like the dad finally watches the daughter's like home video.
Yeah,
stuff.
I was like, oh.
Yeah, and then he finally he's like, oh my god, what am I doing to her? Like, I need to support her. And that's just such a great part of the film.
Yeah, that was definitely a moment that kind of got to me as well, because just seeing her, and she has a dream and doesn't feel like people believe in her or support her, and their dad finally does, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. Then you finally got it. Yeah, that was a great moment. That was really great. Cool. Yeah, Mitchell vs. Machines, crazy movie, great movie. Okay, so my number 7 is Coda, the child.
Love it.
Yeah, Coda is a great movie. So Coda, it's about this girl who's in high school, and all of her family is deaf except for her. And we get into this thing where she's like really good at singing, basically, and so she starts practicing with a singing like teacher as her coach. I forget what the actor's name is, but he's like a well-known like Spanish actor.
I can't remember his name either.
Yeah, but he's a cool actor. And I forget the actress's name, who's the mom.
Marlee Matlin.
Yeah, Marlee Matlin. Yeah, she's excellent as always. And this movie's great. It's really funny. It's really kind of touching in a lot of ways. And to see this sort of experience done well is really kind of heartwarming. And there's some like really incredible moments that are like really hit you right in the heart towards the end of the film a couple of times with like the daughter and the dad. And there's some stuff that's really funny, like the mom and the dad are always having sex or stuff.
Yeah.
Like, which is really funny. And yeah, and it doesn't, it also does a good job of like not casting the main character like as being a perfect person. Like, she gets into a fight with her brother and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, you just got to move on. You got to like not be this perfect person who's always saving us.
But then her parents want her to stick around and keep translating for them, but she wants to be a singer. And do you stay with your family and be with them, or do you defy what they want, possibly risk alienating yourself from them to chase your dreams?
Yeah. And that's a really tough thing because like, it's such a natural thing to like want to help your family. That's the most natural thing you can imagine. But that's the whole coming of age story, right? You got to like move on and find out what's right to do for yourself. And that's what really I think is so great about this film is like it takes that idea and it's like, well, what if you had to move on and your parents were vulnerable and you needed to take care of them? I just thought it was really great and really touching film. And this was another one that was kind of it got sent to Apple and kind of disappeared.
Yeah, I feel like more people probably would have watched. I don't know. Maybe they would have watched it if it had been theaters. Maybe not. I don't know. But especially being on Apple, I feel like people don't really give those movies a chance.
Apple is like the gilded prison. It's like it's a really nice prison, but it's a prison. Like there's just not the same footprint as Netflix or even Amazon. There's been some
or Hulu or something like that.
Yeah, it's just not the same. But I watched it. I liked it. I'm glad that they, put it out there. So yeah, Coda. That's my number 7. So what is your number 6?
My number 6 is Blue Bayou, because this movie made me cry. It made me think. It has my girl Alicia Vikander in it. It's so great. It was just it impressed me because it's a directorial debut. Justin Chon wrote it himself as well, and just his performance as I cannot remember the main character's name. That's bad. But his performance as the main character and him facing deportation, even though he was adopted by a family in the States and he's only lived in the States. He doesn't know where he's from. He's never been there. And he's got I believe I don't know if she's his girlfriend, his wife, but they have a child together. She's pregnant with their second, and he risks being taken away from them and not even seeing his baby that hasn't been born yet. And they're trying to figure out how to be able to have him stay.
Yeah.
And of course, this causes complications with his significant other, his friends, just trying to figure out how to raise money and how to stay. And just, it's brutal, emotionally brutal. And just to know that the people actually experience this still to this day here is so disheartening. And Justin Chon just directed this brilliantly and just put the message across in a way that makes it very real and makes you care about what's happening. And again, this is a movie that I think didn't get a lot of love because limited theatrical release and just kind of got dumped on demand a couple weeks after it came out, I think. But it's such a beautiful movie, and if you haven't watched it, you really need to, because it's moving, and it can be hard to watch at times, but it's just so important and so beautiful.
Totally, yeah, I totally agree. It's really beautifully shot, and there's so many good character things that are done. Because like the other thing too, that's a big part of the film is maybe his family should go with him to Korea.
Yeah.
Right? Because they could all be together in Korea. But is that the best thing for him? Is that the best thing for his kids? And it's just so difficult. It's such a difficult thing to kind of parse out. And the fact that a person has to make those kind of choices is really hard. It does such a great job of making us empathize with the main character, because like a part of it too is like, I forget what he did. He was tattoo artist, right? That was like his main.
Yeah, he was a tattoo artist.
Yeah. And he had some run-ins in with these kind of like underground people who do robberies and stuff. And there's this great scene where he gets so pushed so hard because he needs a lawyer that he goes back to doing robberies, and they rob this store,
the motorcycle shop.
And he has to do a getaway, and it's like really well done. but you understand why he would do it, and you understand, and you want him to get away. You want him to get away. We definitely don't want him to get caught by the cops in that situation, which is just like perfect. It's like a perfect way to understand this person, because if you see there was a robbery on South blah 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 street where they took 8 motorcycles, you go, oh, that's terrible. But you don't know the human story behind it.
No.
And this just like makes you think of it in a different way, which I thought was so nice. And the other thing too is like the main, so his, I'm not sure if they're married or not, but his, let's just say fiance, her ex-husband is a cop,
and he wants her back.
Yeah, he's a cop, but he's kind of a dick. And actually his partner is even bigger dick.
Yeah, and he does something that is a huge detriment to them as well.
Yeah. And I feel like, I forget, but like the whole conceit of the movie is that they have this weird encounter with the cop and the ex-boyfriend cop and his partner at a grocery store. And that basically screws up the rest of their lives.
It does, yeah.
Crazy, yeah. And again, this film is like the opening shot. Just watch the opening shot, okay? The opening sequence of this movie is like cinema. It is beautiful, unbelievably beautiful. Yeah, I really wish more people had watched that film because it deserves some attention. It's great.
It really does, yeah.
Cool. All right, so my number 6 is the film Mass. Now, this was another film that I think a lot of people didn't see because it was in theaters for like a second.
Yeah, I just saw this a couple weeks ago, I believe.
Yeah. This film is heavy. This film is hella heavy. Like the only non-heavy part is like basically there's this great chorus. There's these, so like the main characters are meeting at this church, and then there's like two characters who work at the church, and then there's a third character who's setting up this meeting. And you immediately hate this one woman who's like,
yeah, I mean,
you immediately hate her.
It's like, how rude can you be,
dude? She's like, and it's not even like rude. It's rude, and on top of that, it's like the passive aggressive rudeness.
Yeah.
She's just like, so this is Greek chorus characters who kind of set us up to expect what's about to happen. And then we get into it and we realize that this is a meeting of two families where one, their son was killed in a mass shooting, and the other, their son was the mass shooter. And it's like, whoa, like that. The premise of that is like really palpable. I mean, unfortunately, in our culture in America, this type of thing, this type of event is just, it's scary how commonplace it is, how so many people are going to be affected in this way. And, just to the point where you're going to know someone, they're going to be near an event or have known someone who's part of it. I mean, now it's gotten to the point where there are people who've been in multiple. There are people who survived.
It's terrible.
Crazy. It's crazy. And this film does such a great job of like hitting to the truth of the need for catharsis when these things happen.
I thought the way that the dialogue is written and how the characters express it really, like, this movie just takes place in this one room pretty much, but the way they are describing things, you get this image in your head of what was happening. even though you don't actually see anything. And the performances are incredible. Jason Isaacs, Martha Plimpton, and Dowd. I forget the other man's name. What's that actor's name?
Yeah, I know. I forget him too. Yeah.
Ah. Anyway, they're all four great,
They're
but
great.
it's just it is a hard movie to watch just because of what they talk about and just the roller coaster of emotions they go through, and then you go through it in kind of a you say vicarious way because you're living it through them.
Yeah, it like you said, it is so palpable because they go over the events in such a way that you know it and you can feel what happened. And again, like I said, it's not a story that's unfamiliar. I mean, we've all watched the news and seen something that happened anywhere, at a school, at a college, at a grocery store, at a Walmart, going postal. Like, these things are just so common.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's so tragic, but it's a really kind of beautiful, bittersweet, somber film. And it's really well done, but it is a heavy topic. But I'm really glad I got a chance to see it in theaters in like the tiny window that it had, because it's a really well done film. And it's, I don't know what the prognostications of like the award season is, but this film it's 4 people in a room, and it's very captivating because of the performances. So yeah, that's my number 6. My number 6 is Mass. So what's your number 5?
My number 5 is The Last Duel, because I didn't get to see this until it came on demand. It was in my home theater, I think, for a week before they took it out because it bombed. I think it made like $4 million its opening weekend, which is ridiculous considering I think they spent over $100 million on this.
Yeah.
But the performances from Jodie Comer, one of my favorite up-and-coming actresses, Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Ben Affleck, which his character is just insane. I mean, and then, the Rashomon style, having the 3 different perspectives, and you start out with Matt Damon's character and seeing like he sees himself as this great guy, and then Driver's character, I can't remember one is Jean.
There's these French names.
Yeah, Jean, Marguerite, and Jacques, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
You see Adam Driver's character, and he sees Matt Damon's character as the guy who he really is, but he has a different perception of Jodie Comer's character, Marguerite. Like, he's like, oh, I'm in love with her, and she's in love with me too, I can tell it. And then you see Marguerite's version of events where her husband's a terrible person, and Adam Driver's character, she's not in love with him, but he thinks she is. And she's like, she does admit that he's handsome, but she doesn't have feelings for him. And she's just living this to her, it's a horrible life because her husband's terrible to her, or she's being left alone all the time. But it was an arranged marriage, and her husband really just married her because he thought she could provide him with money and land, when really her family is losing that. And since it is based on a true event, which I did not look up what happened before the movie. After the movie, I did look up and see if it was accurate, and it pretty much was accurate to what actually happened. They don't know for sure. Like, even in history, they don't know the exact specifics, but it's pretty close to historical records. And again, the titular Last Duel is so visceral and so hard-hitting and so nerve-shredding. And this movie's 2.5 hours, and it just flew by for me. It didn't feel that long, and I thought it was a great film. And it is heavy and definitely trigger warning worthy, but it's done so well, and I think it is a really big shame that more people haven't watched it, didn't really give it a chance. And I mean, of course, you don't need to watch it if you're sensitive to the subject matter, and it's not going to gel with some people just because of the nature of how it's structured and the setting, but give it a chance because it really deserves to be seen more than it has been.
Yeah, totally agree. It's an excellent film, and it's really like not only the ending, but the whole Matt Damon story arc part of it. It's really brutal. Like, there's some brutal battles.
Yeah, And like I went from liking his character to downright despising him. And it's just so impressive the way that Ridley Scott structured it to make you feel that way.
Yeah,
And then,
totally.
of course, Adam Driver's character didn't really care for him at first. I mean, I didn't fall in love with him or anything, but I learned that he wasn't as bad as he's made out to be at the beginning of the movie. And then you see Marguerite grow in strength and see what she's really struggling through. And it's just so wonderfully crafted. And it just kind of blew my mind just how well everything is just put together.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And I love like the parts where you see the lie in different character story. Like there's one where Matt Damon's character telling Jodie Comer like, oh yeah, and then I came in, I stormed him, and I said this, and I said this, and I said this. It's like, oh, you did? You said that? And we don't see him say that. We see him talk about that. And I was like, oh, that's a lie. And then we see the other perspective where he makes an ass of himself.
Yeah.
The other thing too is like, again, he marries her for money. Well, so in his perspective, the whole thing was like, oh, he met her and she was in love with him immediately. Is like basically given, and that he married her with out of true love. And then we see from her perspective that they got married, but then he immediately asked, oh, what about this land? And then the dad was like, I don't own that land anymore, and so I can't give you that much money. He's like, what? And this is at the altar.
Mm-hmm.
It's be like if you're at the altar and you're like, so how much is in your bank account right now?
We have nothing. What?
What? This is an outrage. This is terrible. I'll marry you anyway, but this is outrageous. I was expecting 6 figures. Basically that's what he did. And then that totally changes everything because like we thought that he didn't know that the land was taken when he does this lawsuit. So that actually makes this whole thing his fault.
It is, yeah.
The whole thing is his fault because he knew that they bequeathed the land because of the debts, but he sued anyway. So he's a dick. Yeah. And so, and then, there's also with the Adam Driver character, we see that he's womanizing with Ben Affleck. And so maybe that kind of clouds why he thinks that all women are.
Yeah. Because I mean, Ben Affleck's character is married. His wife is like pregnant with their 6th or 8th child, but he's got like this room where he has a harem.
Is a harem, yeah.
And he's just dragging Adam Driver's character, and they're like, "Take your pants off."
Yeah.
Which I laughed at that part. Okay, it was funny.
Yeah. His character's great.
But yeah, I mean, Adam Driver's character, I can't remember. I get Jean and Jacques mixed up.
Yeah.
But his character just thinks that Jodie Comer's character is in love with him and that he loves her, when really it's not the case. And he doesn't see the attack as what it truly was. He sees it as, oh, she was consenting to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like, he's like, all women kind of, fight it off at first, but then, they start to like it. But the whole time, in her case, you see it's a terrible thing, and she's traumatized from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they do such a great job of showing when she's on trial and the way they cross-examine her. And they're saying, oh, well, if a woman had pleasure, that means that, well, she wanted it, basically, is I think what they said.
Yeah, and she's pregnant.
Yes.
And they're like, well, is it your husband's child? And that's where they come into the whole pleasure thing. Like, you can't become pregnant unless you have pleasure.
Yep, exactly. Which is...
And the thing is, she had been married to Matt Damon's character for 5 years and wasn't able to get pregnant. And then when that happened... pregnant.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's going on, and the thing that really got me too is like, again, they talk about like, if you're wrong, we're going to have to burn you at the stake, and you're gonna be burned for like 3 minutes before you die. And it's like, whoa, are we gonna see her be burned at the stake after her husband gets killed? And so again, that just, for me, just like perfectly encapsulated, like, okay, I have a rooting interest in this duel. The other thing I really liked too was the kid who played the king. He's the older, but they kind of aged him down, but like he is so perfect in this movie in such a subtle way, because you can tell he's he is a child. This is a
Mm-hmm.
child. They put a crown on his head, and he's acting like a child, but he has all this power, and it's ridiculous. And he's just like there's this great scene where the duel is happening. He's laughing and screaming and like kill him, blah blah blah.
Yeah. And like they ask him for permission to have the duel. He's like, a duel? Yeah.
Like a child who's been told that he's gonna see two dinosaurs fight. His two
Yeah.
dinosaurs are gonna come to life and fight. He's like, yeah. It's so funny. Like his performance is great. It's perfect. There's just so many times where he's just like being silly or dumb or, and then his wife, who's also like the same age, is just like, okay, you're a fucking idiot.
She's like, why did I have to get married to you? I know our families arranged this, but this sucks.
It's great. It's just such a perfect way of encapsulating what the reality of like the whole monarchy was.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're putting your power in the hands of a idiotic child.
And then they say, oh, well, whoever wins this duel is telling the truth because God would not let who is telling the truth die. So they're like, it's in God's hands now.
Yeah, it's in God. Yeah, for real, it's in God's hands, and it's absurd. It's so absurd. It's so absurd. But yeah, it's a great film. Great film. Wish it got a better shot theatrically, but 2021. It was a savage time to be.
It was.
Unless you're Spider-Man or something, or even Eternals didn't do great.
That's true. Yeah.
So
I still haven't seen Eternals.
Yeah.
And I always try to hop on Marvel movies as fast as I can, and I just haven't had a huge desire to watch Eternals, which says something.
Oh yeah, it's kind of it'll be interesting to see how they throw the Dark World this one, like make it come back around,
yeah,
relevant, but because that's what they're gonna have to do. So yeah. Well, so my number 5 is Licorice Pizza.
I want to see that, but didn't come here, so I did not get a chance to.
Yeah, availability, a real problem, unfortunately. And I got a chance to see this. I hopped on it right away. I saw it. It was a 60 millimeter showing, which is really great. It's a really sweet coming of age movie. It's like the it's like the 70s. Yeah, this is like the early 70s. Really some really great acting. Philip Seymour Hoffman's son is in it. Alana Haim. Some great. Bradley Cooper's great. I think Sean Penn is great in this movie. He doesn't get as much talk as Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper's character is very bombastic, but Sean Penn's character is like out of his mind. He's out of his mind, but in a way that's kind of subtle, and so you don't get it at first. But he is out of his mind, straight up, but in a really funny way, actually. So it's a great character, and it's just like all these little vignettes of this, again, another coming of age film about this girl who is kind of lost, and especially like at this time, and it's not like today where I feel like there's a lot of people who are just like in their 20s or 30s and kind of aimless. If it's 1970 and you're an aimless 20-year-old, you are an outcast. Like they would straight up outcast you. And she just, kind of falls in with this young charismatic guy, and they just kind of hang around and have adventures, basically. It's just so it's really well shot. It's beautifully acted. It's really funny. There's a lot of stuff that's really, really funny. Like surprisingly very funny. And it's just like a fun time capsule of going back in time to this period and being able to like live in the 70s for a moment. This time that Paul Thomas Anderson obviously loves quite a bit because he's gone there a few times. So Licorice Pizza, that's my number 5. Awesome film.
And I can't wait for that to come on demand so I can finally watch it.
yeah, totally. So what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Belfast.
Great. Yeah.
I thought it was really well done. I know Kenneth Branagh based it off his own experience growing up during the Troubles, which was the Protestant versus Catholic. Wasn't really a war, but I guess in a sense it was. In Ireland in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And again, it is seen from the perspective of the child, and I cannot for the life of me remember his name in the movie. I know it's the actor's Jude Hill. But you see it through his eyes, and for the most part, most of the film is kind of, just focused on the family and how he loves being in Belfast, but you do see some moments where there's riots happening in the street, there's looting, his parents are arguing, and I think his parents, portrayed by Katrina Balfe and Jamie Dornan, are fantastic.
Mhm.
As well as his grandparents, Judi Dench and Kieran Hines. The whole cast is amazing, and it being shot in black and white, I think, really lends it this air of authenticity and gives it a more serious feeling, even though some of it's not very serious at all. You see him, go to the store and steal
Yeah,
some candy, and it's like the worst candy you could get.
yeah,
And then he's going and looting during the looting session, and he's just grabbing random things from the store. But you just see him growing up, and his parents are talking about, we might have to move to London because it's not safe here. But he doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to leave his grandparents or Belfast, which is the only place he's really ever known. And he doesn't, since he's a child, he doesn't see everything that's going on like his parents do. And it's just it's wonderful. And I didn't expect to be as moved by it as I was, but it's great. If you haven't watched it, again, give it a shot, because this was another movie that didn't come to theaters where I'm at, so I had to wait for the on-demand release. But if it had been in theaters, I would have watched it in theaters because it was that beautiful. And I really loved how, even though this movie is in black and white, every time his grandma would take him to watch a play or something, it would be in full color. But then when it pans back to the audience, they're in black and white. And I just thought that was a really nice touch.
yes, totally agree. Very well done. Yeah, I really like, so like there's a first, so like, we see him, it kind of flashes back. It's like, it's like Belfast today, and it's like this kind of port city.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Belfast in 19 whatever, and it's like, oh, and and it does such a great job of like kind of painting a picture of like, you think of these times in the past as kind of being idealistic, and it's a kind of it's interesting because it's an idealistic portrayal, but from the perspective of a child. But there's all this tumult happening. It's really bad. And there's this great scene where, he's like running around and he's like, oh, hey, it's like, and it seems like a place where everyone is looking out for everyone else, like, the, what we think of like in America as like the perfect time of the 50s or whatever. And then out of nowhere, there's a riot and they're busting down buildings and destroying stuff. And like, it's just so well done. Like when he sees that moment of a bunch of people destroying the place that he grew up, and it's like, whoa, like what, you really feel it, where it's just like out of nowhere, your whole world is thrown upside down, and his mom's in a panic. Where is he? Gotta find him. And they're trying to hide, and that's just like, sometimes that's how life hits you. You're just in the middle of this thing that you don't have no control over. And I think what's interesting too about them, the family, I'm pretty sure they were also Protestant.
They were, yeah.
Yeah, they were also Protestant, but they were also like not, there's a character who's like basically the villain, who's like, hey, we need you to like be on our side against the Catholics, and they're like, no, we're not going to do that. Well, either you're with us or you're against us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting to see that they were, trying to keep the community alive, but it was just, it was too far gone. And I really thought that was like kind of a nice part of the film. Like they were like, I know, it's like they were telling him, hey, look, I know that the world is exploding, but we don't want any part of this hatred. That's not who we are. Because stuff like that can really tear communities apart, pointing fingers at people to, any type of division. And it can be explosive. And it was very explosive in that time period. So yeah, it's a great film. I even like the cousin, the actor who plays the cousin. I know she was in. I maybe one of the few people who watched that. Oh, what was that? I forget. It was a movie on Disney Plus. Artemis Fowl. Yeah, she was in Artemis Fowl too.
That was also directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah. He must have liked her, and he was like, "Oh, you should be in this movie I'm going to do about my childhood." Yeah, because she plays the older cousin who's like, and such a fun character who's always kind of into stuff, and like, you want to be part of our club, blah blah blah, you have to do this. You have to steal
she's like, steal some candy,
and
then he picks the worst candy you can even eat.
Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah. Yeah. And so I don't know. I thought the movie was great too. I really liked it. It's very sweet. Very, very sweet film.
Also very sad though at points,
So
because
sad. Yeah.
I
So sad.
was still crying when this movie ended.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, I mean, you can never go home again.
Hmm.
As saying goes, like it's really, and that's what makes it so hard to like do that stuff. Cause like once you're gone, that's it. But like there's a lot of times people they have to do it. They have to go somewhere else. Um, So yeah, so my number four is the tragedy of Macbeth. Yeah,
I've been meaning to watch that and I still haven't. It's on Apple TV Plus, but I know it was in theaters before.
was in theaters for a couple weeks. I got a chance to see it in like a IMAX showing, which is cool. And it's a great film. I think it's very well directed, very well acted. I mean, look, you got Denzel, Francis
Yeah.
McDormand, and the other bit players are really good too. Um, the production design on this movie is like crazy. Like the way that they make everything look, because it looks like a set, but it looks otherworldly,
Hmm.
and that's what's so cool. And there's so many things that are done that are very cinematic in the film, which I really liked. So many transitions, so many shots, so many things that are done, and the way that they use black and white too, it's great. I was really just like I love the films. Like this is what I live for. Films that look like this. Films that look like this is what I want in my life. Um, and it's very cool to see Denzel play Macbeth for sure. That's the thing that we need in the
Yeah.
world. It's in the cinema world is to see his take on Macbeth, and does not disappoint. It is excellent. Yeah, I mean, there's probably not a lot more I could say about the film. I really, really liked it. It's a story we've seen many times, and it continues to be good every time that it's put out there. And yeah, Joe Cohen, another excellent film. So, Macbeth. All right, so we're into the top three. We're getting
Yep.
close. So, Alyssa, what's your number three?
This was very hard to choose if this is going to be two or three, but it's Spider-Man No Way Home,
Yeah, great.
because it totally blew me out of the water because I liked Spider-Man Homecoming. I really, really enjoyed Spider-Man No Way Home. I mean, Spider-Man Far From Home. But this one just upped the ante so much. And to be honest, I have not watched the Amazing Spider-Man movies. But I just, oh my God. I'm sure everyone has seen this movie by now, but I don't want to give spoilers at
Yeah,
all. So just to keep it vague, um, just seeing Tom Holland come back as Spider-Man, he's having to deal with these very real issues. Uh, the consequences from the second movie rolling over into this movie, and he brings in Doctor Strange to help him and gets some magic involved in alternate universes, and it's just something you don't expect to see in a Spider-Man movie. It feels very, I don't know what the word is, just throwing the magic and the alternate universes in it. I know there were alternate universes in the comic series because there are multiple different Spider-Man, but I haven't read the comic books.
yeah,
So just watching the films, you don't really get that sense until this movie that this kind of thing is possible, especially with the MCU.
mhm,
It's a treat,
yeah,
especially if you're a big Spider-Man fan.
yeah,
You're gonna pick up on a lot of things, and there's some extra things that like everyone in the theater started screaming at when they saw it. And yeah, it was a packed theater when I watched it, and people screamed at all the moments that people were designed to scream at.
yeah,
And just the way they wrote this movie and how they tied everything together in such, they make it seem so simple, but when you think about having to write this movie, how hard it must have been, and they just make it seem like effortless, and it flows so well. And I loved it. It was just such a spectacle, and it was fun, and made me cry a couple times. It was way more than I thought it would be, and I'll definitely be rewatching it. I can't wait to see what happens after this movie, because there are going to be three more Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland in them. So that's going to be really interesting to see the consequences from this movie go into the fourth movie and the fifth and the sixth movie. But yeah, I loved it. It was entertaining. It was thought provoking. It was um, appealing to fans. Like, it was for a large demographic.
Yes. So the thing that kind of blows me away with Spider-Man No Way Home is the fact that they made this movie basically a like Peter Parker origin story. Spider-Man.
They did, yeah.
MCU Spider-Man. This is the MCU Spider-Man's origin story, but it's 6 movies in, right? So it's Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, No Far From Home, Homecoming, No Way Home. So so we have 6 movies, and then we see the origin of this guy all the way at this point, which is kind of mind blowing, and it's really genius because like for a long time people were saying, "Oh, well, we don't want to see the whole Uncle Ben thing. We don't need that," and we didn't have that. And I would say one of the arguments that I think is kind of valid with this Spider-Man is like, man, this Spider-Man was born with it all, basically. Tony found him and was just like, "Hey, kid, come join the Avengers." Well, he didn't have him join the Avengers. Like, come and do this thing for me, and maybe I'll make you an Avenger or something. Fight these guys for me, and he does it, and he gives them all this tech. He does all this stuff for him, and it's like, okay, well, this Spider-Man's kind of never had to earn it. This Spider-Man's never had the traditional things that in the comics and some of the other media where we felt like this character has to like kind of go through things. And, well, everyone got what they wished for, just like Peter Parker. And at the end of this movie, like he's in a totally different place. And yeah, we get a lot of fan service stuff, but like the way that they bring all these old characters back is done in a way that really is really great and resonates. And it resonates in such a way that I think we're probably going to see more of them in other movies in the future. So yeah, overall, it's a very, very well done film. I mean, the movie's made so much money with no China release. This movie would have made $2 billion.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, this movie is like super popular and very fun, and definitely the most fun theater experience I've had this year. It was excellent. So yeah, I totally agree. Like that movie. Cool. All right, so my number three. Speaking of long arcs of a series, mine is Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.01 Thrice Upon a Time.
Which is the director's cut of the film.
Yes. So this film is so basically, just to kind of give an overview of what Evangelion is, it's a story about this young boy, Shinji, and his dad runs this project in this future world where basically the world's been destroyed by these alien, they call them angels, but they come around destroying the world, and so they had to create these mechs to fight these aliens off. The story gets way more complicated after that, but that's just like the general premise. It's just like a big mech show, but it's with like teenagers, and so there's some teenage drama. So there was a TV show, like, or an anime show that ran. There was an ending of the show that a bunch of people hated at the time, apparently. So then they did a remake of the ending that was called The End of Evangelion, which blew people's minds in both good and bad ways. And then they did a whole remake of the show in movies. And so this is the 4th movie that concludes the series, but it's also a remake of The End of Evangelion. So this is basically the 3rd time doing an ending to the story, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, I watched The End of Evangelion sometime like last year, and it's a crazy, crazy, crazy movie. It's crazy. And the fact that they were going to do a remake of a movie that's totally insane is kind of like double insane, honestly. And so it's like, how do you make a remake of this movie that was crazy, but is also actually really good and kind of like meta, and it kind of done in a way that's like very thought-provoking? How do you do that, but also kind of maybe make this whole thing make more sense? And somehow Evangelion Thrice Upon a Time did that. It somehow took all these things and put them together. It was both a conclusion to the story that made more sense. It was also a remake of the end of Evangelion that kept the craziness, but also made it all make sense. And so somehow this movie works. This movie is amazing. It's like amazing, and it's just a great ending for the series. And again, it gives you all the things you want. There's some existential craziness. There's some mech fighting that's really well done and well animated. There's all these characters that we know and love that are there, like Shenji and I forget the other girl, the German girl with the eye patch.
I've never watched Evangelion, and I really want to, but it's so hard to find. I know it's on Netflix, but people say don't watch that version. I'm trying to find the original version to watch. It's hard though.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff because again, you gotta watch. Basically, the watching order is watch the TV show, watch End of Evangelion, then watch all these remakes. That's a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff, and it's daunting. But it's a good show, and it's the whole universe. I like it, and the ending of this was like really interesting and really well done, and I really liked the way that they did it. And there were just so many things that kind of blew me away in a good way, where I thought, wow, that's a really good way to resolve something within this story. And stuff was like unexpected. I was like, whoa, what just happened? Yeah. So I love Evangelion. It's cool. I really like this movie, and yeah, I mean, I think that's all that I can really say. So cool. So yeah. So what's your number 2?
My number 2 is The Green Knight, which I know it's a very divisive movie, and I had such a wonderful time just experiencing this for the first time because I don't know how it ended up in the theater here. It was only here for I think a week, but I was the only person in the theater, and seeing on the big screen with the surround sound and not surround sound, Dolby sound. It was just an incredible experience, and I was familiar with the story of Sir Gawain. They pronounce it a couple different ways in the movie, so I don't honestly know how it's supposed to be pronounced. But they subvert the story. Like every story beat from the original is changed, so it's the antithesis of it. And it's a very artistic film. It's one that wants you to think. It wants to provoke thought in the viewer, but it's shot so beautifully. I mean, I'm a huge fan of David Lowery's work, and this is probably I would say this is probably my favorite film of his so far. And again, Dev Patel, fantastic job. Alicia Vikander playing 2 different characters in this movie. Both are great. The way it just every single shot in this movie could be a painting or could be a work of art.
Yeah.
The soundtrack's phenomenal. Just everything about this film, you just want to rewatch it after watching it because you want to pick up things you may have missed on the first watch. You want to think about the original story and how this compares to it. It's just so well done. And I do see where people don't like the film. It can be very confusing. It can be, a little too artsy, but I think that's why I like it. It's just, it doesn't want to be a conventional film. It's not trying to be a conventional film. It wants to challenge you to think and encourage you to talk about it with people and rewatch it. And it just feels like a work of art. And I loved it for that aspect. And plus the design of the Green Knight himself is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really love this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the film a lot too. I really wanted to. I was very close to putting it on my list. I really liked. So, like to me, the opening. So, first off, the opening of this film with this whole thing where it kind of tells us what the fairy tale is going to be about is like so brilliant. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a visual way to take us in and tell us this is a fairy tale, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cinematic way. And the whole thing when the Green Knight shows up and tells them, "Oh, would you like to play a Christmas game?" That scene is great. Because it's so fun because they don't explicitly talk about it, but this isn't it's a tale about King Arthur. It's a related story to King Arthur. And it's just funny to see because I forget the guy's name, but the guy who plays King Arthur is like a known pretty big actor.
No, I'm blanking.
Yeah, I don't know his name, but I know he was in. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He's been in a bunch of stuff. I mean, he's the main villain in, well, arch nemesis of Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible. That's probably where most people have seen him, in terms of his acting. And same with the wife, the person who plays like Guinevere. She's big. And then like that scene where like the Green Knight like takes control of her when she's reading the.
Yes.
That is so effective. It's so effective. I'm like, man, this feels like I am in a fairy tale. Just perfectly encapsulated. I just love that. I loved it. And it's so beautifully shot. Like the way that there's so many shots where you're just like, wow, that's perfect. That is a well composed piece of cinema. And the ending is really smart too.
It is.
It's really smart because it really just makes you think, and you just have to interpret it for what you want. You know, it's great. Yeah. I really like The Green Knight too. Really like it.
Pretty much all you need to know is this is an A24 film, and if you like A24's artsy films, you'll probably like this. If you don't, you probably will not like this. There you go.
That is absolutely a perfect way of putting it, because they have a type of film, A24. You know,
you're gonna either like it or you're gonna hate it.
Yep. All right, awesome. So my number 2 is West Side Story.
I wanted to see that so bad, and I just never got around to it.
Yeah, so the Spielberg, this reimagining of West Side Story, I think it's really great. I think that it's really, again, Steven Spielberg is a guy who is one of the greats, one of the greatest directors of all time.
Legendary.
And they just did such a great job of, like, the acting is great. I think the cinematography is great. The compositions of all of the dance scenes are great. The choreography is great. The way that they do the production design to recreate this time period, the production design and, you know, the VFX team, like, they do a perfect job of creating this place and time. And that is not easy to do. I mean, to recreate 1950s, you know, this part of New York in a way that's seamless. And there's just so many great performances in this film. The songs are really well done and fun. And I mean, I don't know. I love Steven Spielberg's work, and I think this is another great film that he's done. So that's all I really have to say about it. Okay. Drum roll.
Yeah.
We're at number 1. All right, Alyssa, what is your number 1 film of 2020?
My number 1 film of 2021 was Coda. Just because, I mean, I was a choir girl in school, you know, not like a church choir girl, but like I took choir class in school, and just seeing the character, I can always remember the actors, but I can't remember their characters' names for the life of me for some reason.
Yeah.
Amelia Jones's character, you know, her whole family is deaf. Her parents and her brother, they're all deaf. She's the only one that can hear, and she is translating for them all the time, and she helps out on her dad's fishing boat, and her brother as well works there. But she wants to go to music school, and she is a fantastic singer, but her parents and her brother don't know how she sounds because they can't hear her. And they're like, that's kind of an impossible dream. You should just stick to being on the fishing boat with us, helping us out, translating for us. And she just wants to be a singer so badly. And the choir teacher encourages her. He coaches her. He tells her she has a really good shot. She needs to audition for this at the Berklee School of Music. But her parents aren't supportive. And this is her dream. And she's really torn between, do I stay with my family or do I risk everything and try out for music school and go? I don't remember where they're from, but go to California. Is that in California? Berklee?
So
maybe I'm thinking of a different place.
I thought that too, but you're right. But it was in Massachusetts.
I don't know why I think Berkeley's in California all the time, and I'm like, no, it's in Massachusetts.
I mean, you're right. You are not wrong at all. Like, I thought the exact same thing, because I was like, oh, she's gonna go all the way to Berkeley. There's a music school in Berkeley, but it's in Massachusetts.
Yeah,
Massachusetts, which makes sense. But you're not far off to have thought that.
Forgive me for my little faux pas there. But it's just, I mean, when you see her perform, a couple of performances made me cry. There was one that was so breathtaking, and you just don't think of people doing something like this, and then you see it, and you're like, why does this not occur more often? Because this is really important. And just every actor, the whole family is wonderful. Marley Matlin, Troy Kotzer, I think that's how you say his last name. The brother, I cannot remember the actor's name. I just remember he was Love's husband in season 2 of You. He was great as well. And, you know, they're all deaf in real life as well. So it's authentic. And I believe they said they actually consulted the ASL for advice to make sure everything that they're saying is accurate. But it's just such a loving film. You could tell the director, Cyan Heater, just was very passionate about this movie and really wanted people to watch this and, you know, understand the struggles that a deaf family can go through, or a child of a deaf adult, Coda, goes through. It's just something that it's special. It's truly special. And it did get dumped in the Apple TV Plus movie prison, which is really sad. Because, I mean, that limits the amount of people that can see it. But it's wonderful. If you can watch it, watch it. I wish they would make a Blu-ray version. Maybe they have and I don't realize it. But it's a great movie.
Yeah, it's excellent. And there's some stuff in this movie that just really makes you cry.
Mm-hmm.
Feel emotional. There's one in particular between the daughter and the dad.
Yes.
That's just like perfect, but so heartbreaking. Just perfect. Yeah, there's a lot that can be said about this movie, but you know, it's really interesting because like this reminds me out of like Sound of Music, that movie too. Mm-hmm. And both of these movies just do so well dealing with this issue. And it's a thing that's, you know, I feel like it doesn't get a lot of representation in media.
It doesn't, no.
Yeah, and so like I love this movie. I think it's excellent film. So glad that it's out there. I wish more people could see it. That's
me too.
All right, cool. So my number one film, and so for me, like, this was an easy number one. It was always this film from like probably about the first, second time I saw it. So my number one is Dune. Dune is my favorite film of this year. And I think Dune is a film, like, I've always wanted to see a film of Dune done right.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, this has been talked about for a long time, that there should be a film done of Dune, done that kind of does the source material the right way. And Denis Villeneuve was the right person to do it, basically. And it took up to this point for us to finally get it, but it's there. And for me, Dune is like an incredible film. First off, it's so beautifully shot.
It is.
Yeah. Like the experience of, also the thing too about it is like, it's a different experience too when you see it in like a legitimate IMAX theater, because there's so many scenes where that increased aspect ratio adds a lot to the film. And I was lucky enough to see that multiple times. And I think that in and of itself is one of the great cinematic experiences, seeing Dune in a true IMAX format, in a true IMAX theater. So in and of itself, that's an amazing thing. Dune is like so interesting too, because it's one of those things, there's a lot of stories, and actually a lot of them are actually kind of coming out there now. Foundation is another TV show on Apple TV Plus that came out last year that is the basis of a lot of what we understand sci-fi to be. Mm-hmm. I mean, Dune is a lot of where we get Star Wars. And you start to really realize all these things that this story has influenced. And it's tons of it. Tons of sci-fi films come from Dune and the storytelling of this Dune universe. And it's such an interesting story too, because it's really like almost Godfather-esque. You have a character who is thrust into assuming a leadership position maybe before it's too ready, but he has to do it in order to kind of protect the things that he cares about.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sort of the chosen one. And, you know, we're going to see how the chosen one trope goes in this movie. I think a lot of people have certain expectations, but yeah, it may not go the way you think. Let's put it that way. But yeah, this character, and the thing that really gets me, so there's so many things, you know, that I think have been pushed into the pop cultural zeitgeist, and this movie helped to propel them even further. So like the Gom Jabbar test scene, where it tests the will of a person to overcome this pain by reciting the litany of fear. I mean, this stuff is like, I don't even feel like, for me, it's just so perfect to see the way that he put it on screen, something so palpable. And he did a video where he talked about that scene, and it's got like 5 million views or something. So it's like people really like are interested in this, and he just presents this world in such a way that it's just perfect. It makes you want more. It makes you want more of it. And it's so exciting because this is just half of the story. We're gonna get we're gonna get more expansive in the next films or whatever we're gonna get out of this. I think Timothée Chalamet is great. I mean, the acting in this is like, everyone is incredible. Like every single actor they get basically is unbelievable. You know, Rebecca Ferguson is like amazing. I feel like she puts so much into this character, and she's just so interesting because like I look at the way she acts, and I have no idea where her loyalties lie. Which is really interesting. And yeah, I mean, there's so many like levels. Like the thing for me about this Dune movie was like, it made me want to know more about the universe that this movie's a part of. And for me, I can't think of anything better to say about a movie where I'm like, I want the book, I want the comic book, I want everything. I want everything. And this movie did that for me. And so it was easily my number one movie of the year.
I really love Dune as well, and I do want to read the book because I feel like a couple things probably went over my head because I haven't read the book. But yeah, I agree with you. The acting is phenomenal. It's a beautiful movie. So great to look at. You can definitely tell the influences on science fiction films of today and of the past from this story. I'm looking forward to part 2 because the way this one ends, you definitely feel like it's only half of a mega epic story. It's just so many things. Like you said, the test where he puts his hand in the box.
Test, yeah.
Yeah, just incredible to see, and it's just a wonderful film. And Denis Villeneuve is such a fantastic director. I don't think he's ever missed a beat with one of his films.
No, he really hasn't. It's kind of crazy. He really hasn't. I mean, the only thing would be like, and this film is not bad, but like Enemy. Enemy is a film that is very surreal.
I would say that's probably my least favorite movie of his, but it's still not a bad movie by any means.
It's very surreal, and it might hit people a certain way.
Yeah.
You're like, what? People, just like, there are people who don't interpret the ending a certain way, and that can throw them off.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really interesting. But yeah, I mean, I love Dune. I mean, just like seeing the sandworms, like the way they depict the sandworms. I mean, the way that they depict the Sardaukar. I mean, that the Seleucus Secundus, that the planet where the dude's on the minaret and he's like, oh no, yeah, like that is, it's like a 2-minute scene. That scene is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Honestly, like I can't imagine a scene that's so effective because it tells you everything without having to say anything, really. I mean, there's, the David Desmalchian character meets with this Sardaukar general guy, I guess you could call him that, where he's like, I need your army to come here and kill a bunch of people. He's like, okay, yeah, we'll do it because we can kill anybody, like, easily. And it's a planet where it rains all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they have these people who are basically, the way it looks is like they're crucified upside down. And they have these reservoirs that collect rainwater and their blood, and they then use that blood to bless their soldiers before they leave for war. Kind of tells me everything I need to know about this universe.
Yeah.
And these are the most bad mofos in the universe, basically, is the implication. And it's just like, whoa, this is crazy. I mean, the fact, just like the throat singing dude on a minaret. I love it. I'm in love. Like, you got me. And we're promised so much. Like, there's that dream. Like, Paul has his dream in the tent where he sees possible futures, and he sees himself as this kind of almost like a demigod or something. When he returns to Caladan, it's like a conquered hero, and there are all these people praising him, and then he sees this battle with the Fremen warriors fighting the Sardaukar in the sand dunes, and then you see a worm come out of the earth. It's like, okay, I'm in this. I'm in for the second movie because I got to see that.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's so much there. There's so much to this universe, and it's only kind of touching on the surface. And there's so much stuff that this movie doesn't touch on at all. The memtats, the people who do calculations in their brain that we see a couple times with their eyes roll in the back of their head, and we see the whites of their eyes. Film never really explicitly talks about that, but it kind of, again, another scene that I love was when the Herald of the Change comes, and he has to sign and seal that he's going to take over Arrakis. That scene is so great because it's like a way of telling us all this stuff about the universe that's not in the book. The book is just like, oh yeah, so we had to leave because they gave us Arrakis, and by the way, we're going to get stabbed in the back, and this person's going to be the one to do it. But that scene tells us so much about Dune and the universe, and we see this massive ship, and then we see a smaller ship come out, and we see how big that smaller ship is. So we're like, whoa, the scale of this stuff is so large. And then we see all these other characters, and we see the Daft Punk looking guys, the Trade Federation or whatever, the Trading Guild or whatever they're called. It's great. I love all of it. I love all of it. The costumes. Oh my god, the costumes are unbelievable. When Rebecca Ferguson arrives on Arrakis, the thing that she's wearing is, it's like what? Who came up with this? This is so creative. Yeah, I could go on and on and on. I won't. But yeah, Dune's my number one. Love it. Cool. All right. Yeah, I think that covers it. Any last thoughts, last words about these lists or about 2021 in general?
2021 was an insane year for movies. There were so many that I loved that didn't make the list, but I mean, it was so hard to make this list compared to 2020. Like, so many movies came out, and I'm hoping 2022 is just as good and just as hard to make a list out of. Who knows? We won't know until the end of the year. Yeah. But just a wonderful year last year for movies, for pretty much every genre out there.
Yeah,
there was something special.
Yeah, totally. This year should be good. There's a Martin Scorsese movie. There's we're supposed to get Avatar 2. We're supposed to get there's a bunch of like really big directors doing some stuff. So as long as there's no delays, it should be a good year.
Hopefully,
yeah, we gotta hope, because that COVID's no joke.
Nope.
So we'll see. All right, so yeah, well, thanks a lot, everybody. Really appreciate you stopping by, and thanks a lot. Take care.
Bye, guys.